As we reflect on the history of the United States, there is a trend that seems to be the root of many issues that lead to reform movements. The issue that is creating conflict among the people is discrimination. Discrimination is the unjust treatment of one another based off differences, especially in regards to race, ethnicity, sex, or age. Although many groups of people have been affected by the disgraces that discrimination has caused, I will be highlighting how women today are still being discriminated against without grounds. Looking specifically at women's history, we can easily see discriminative acts towards them, such as not having the right to vote, join the army, open a bank account, and the list continues. With these basic rights being taken away with no valid reason, it resulted in women wanting to create change. As seen today at events like women's marches, women are still fighting for equality in both their personal and professional lives. As a result of women's movements, women have gained some ground when it comes to equality. However, there is still room to close the gap, specifically in regards to the gender gap in the STEM industry. In the United States, the STEM industry is steadily growing at a rate of 3%, while the rest of the workforce is at 2%. With this growing industry, it will create a number of jobs that could be beneficial to people who have degrees in this area. Although this industry is growing rapidly, there is prevalent discrimination against women due to reasons such as men simply being the better option, not being able to connect with colleagues, and being seen as a homekeeper. On the other hand, some believe that the lack of women in the STEM industry is related to something else. I think that women who are attempting to join the STEM industry are victims of sexual discrimination, and steps need to be taken to close the gap. For centuries, men have been deemed superior to women simply because that's how it's always been. Although it has become clear that women and men are capable of the same things, it seems that science jobs are still dominated by men. For instance, according to the National Science Foundation, in 2015, 40% of women have their highest degree in science and engineering. However, only 28% of them occupy a job related to their degree. Because of this data, you are able to see the small amount of women who are successfully being hired in their field of studies. Because we see a large amount of qualified women not attaining jobs in their field, it raises the question, why? Two researchers, Gerhard Sonner and Gerald Holton, began a study that would compare a group of women and men who had prestigious postdoctoral fellowships in science. In the article, Sonner explains that men occupy 41% of full professorships, while 23% of women did. And on average, men's publications were 2.8, while women's were 2.3. From this, you are able to see that women are not publishing as much as their male counterparts, which may be due to the lack of other female colleagues. But it is also apparent that there is a large gap in the gender ratio among the professorship. In addition, Sonner and Holton compare men and women based on their area of study and found that women biologists in our group did about as well as their male counterparts. Among the younger women in the physical sciences, mathematics, and engineering, for example, the average academic status was almost a full rank below the men's. Comparing these results shows specifically what concentrations of science are experiencing larger disparities. The results of comparing the male and female biologists can be supported by women creating critical mass in biology, meaning that women occupy a higher percent of that field. As a result, male and female biologists' actions have created an atmosphere that will make women more comfortable in their work setting. If women were to gain critical mass in all areas of science, it would create a more level playing field, possibly resulting in women doing as well as the men. Similar to what we saw with biology. Because we saw that the success of women in science can be connected to having a small gender gap between her and her peers, it should influence science institutions to hire more women to close the gender gaps. If institutions do this, it will create a stronger community and more camaraderie, potentially resulting in science innovation. One example of an institute treating women differently appears in the Salk Institute versus Women case in San Diego, California. In this case, the women claimed that they were not receiving as much funding as their male counterparts, despite the fact that women were receiving $195,000 for each scientist, while men were only receiving $95,000. This being the case, women should be receiving the same, if not more, funding from the Salk Institute. The uneven distributions of funding can be seen by observing the male and female labs. In the labs ran by 4 males, there is an average of 3 scientists who are assigned to help, while in the labs ran by 20 male professors were staffed with around 12 scientists to help. It is very clear that women are not as supported as the men by the Salk Institute. Overall, the discrimination against women was shown through the demographics of women in science and engineering and the behavior and actions of men towards women. All in all, due to the individuality of each person, it is necessary that one looks at the individual's specific circumstances and qualifications when hiring, rather than their gender. Once women are seen for their qualifications and abilities, rather than their gender, they will be able to establish critical mass across all concentrations of sciences, causing both men and women to